And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to Chattering with Nicholas Vince. And this evening, I'm going to be chattering with Robert Nevitt. Say hi, Rob.
Hi, how are we doing? All right.
I'm doing fine, thank you very much.
Cool.
So, apologies to folks for the slight late start this evening. We had a couple of technical issues, as you do. But yeah, so I'm going to be talking to Rob about his career as a filmmaker and also the founder of Celluloid Screams Festival in Sheffield. So we'll come back to that later on. But before I do, I just want to give a shout out to the London Horror Society, the members who supported came along to yet another sellout. I say sellout, they don't charge. It's free to join the society. Every couple of months they organize some really good screenings of short films. And last night we had Andy Gibbons? What am I talking about? Andy Stewart's Inc. Robbie Gibbons had a couple of films there, as did David Chodois. And Andy's Inc. lived up to its reputation, and some poor guy passed out during the film. Did that ever happen at Celluloid Screams with one of Andy's films, Rob?
It did actually, yeah. When we had dysmorphia caused a fainting, which was, I think, they were kind of sort of punch for punch in terms of how many screenings it had, and they'd had a fainting or a collapse or something at every screening by at that point, which was, I know he's proud of. I think he's proud of it.
He is, but we're also genuinely concerned about the people there. It's kind of like,
That's true.
And it was literally right bang on the last credit. And just as we were getting to the very end, we just had the final shot of the movie, and I just heard thump behind me, and the poor guy. And he was just mortified about it. He was like, and his first words were, "I've seen worse films than that before," and because he's a Fright Fest regular apparently. So I did feel sorry for the poor, just not just because he passed out. We decided, the room was quite close because it was upstairs in a pub in London. But yeah, some great films there from Robbie Gibbons and David Chodois there as well. So if you are in London, folks, I will put a link on the YouTube video for the London Horror Society. It is free to join, and you get to meet some really great filmmakers and fans of the genre at these events. They really are my one thing I really try and get to when I know they're happening. And the other thing, just a quick shout out to James Bush, spelt with an E at the end of his name, and for Cannibals and Carpet Fitters. Just came across their KickStarter today. It was a great short film. It's a fun short film. And they're trying to raise £50,000 to make a feature film out of it. So yeah, it should be very interesting. I'll put a link up for that as well. So Rob, how are you doing, by the way? Sorry, I didn't really find out that.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Sort of we're well into sort of programming now for Celluloid Screams for this October. So it's kind of getting through submissions and reaching out to sales agents, distributors, and just kind of getting the lay of the land really of what kind of a landscape the festival scene is going to have this year, because it's always interesting to you never really know at this point how it's going to go and what kind of caliber of films there's going to be, but it's always fun to find that out really. So you're looking at feature films at this stage, are you?
Features
and shorts. We've had a lot, because we migrated from Without a Box to Film Freeway for submissions, which is, I think, a lot of festivals and a lot of filmmakers have kind of taken on board now. And the submissions went through the roof as soon as we made that choice. So and we opened actually earlier than ever this year. Normally we don't tend to open for submissions until about the beginning of March, but we decided we'll just go from January 1st and just go straight from there. And it just keeps going and keeps going, and we've got a lot to look at, so it's going all right.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. And when do you close submissions?
It's July the 1st, I believe, because we used to kind of accept films a little later than that, but as time went on and as the more films we had, that it just got too close when you give yourself kind of a month to to watch any sort of late submissions that have come in, or and actually make the decisions, because sometimes it is the decision making process it's not black and white a lot of the time. It's a lot of balance of, we've already got this film which is kind of thematically similar to this one, and can we play the two? And it's all that kind of debates within the team that we have to have. So buying ourselves a little more time was preferable. Opening earlier and closing earlier is always better, I think.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Okay, well, we'll come back to that more in more detail later on, because it is a fascinating process as far as I'm concerned, for anyone who watches the show for fairly obvious reasons. But let's talk about you as a filmmaker. So, what was the name of the first film Now, you've made music videos as well as short films, is that right?
Yeah, I've kind of done a few sort of no budget music videos. One for a competition that was done locally, which is a kind of make a music video in 2 weeks. 2 weeks to make it is the name of the competition, which is organised by South Yorkshire Filmmakers Network. So I've done bits for them, but then the short films. The first one was Fragile, which was we filmed it in the summer of, I think, 2007, I think it was, and maybe even a bit earlier than that. You know what? It was 2006. Sorry, right. I should prepare all this kind of stuff.
I was just about to prompt you, because I do have your IMDb. Actually,
okay, cool. But yeah, the original plan was that graduated from film school in 2005. And the original plan was, because I didn't study as a director, I basically trained. My specialisms were screenwriting and cinematography.
Okay.
So, and the thinking behind that was always, well, I could arguably learn as much about directing by working with directors, either as a writer or as a camera person. So I kind of went from there, but always had the idea that I wanted to direct. Doesn't everyone? And then I kind of set about doing what was originally going to be a trilogy of short films that were going to be shot in. The idea was we would shoot one in the July, and then we would be in post on that one when we were shooting the next one in August, and then we would do the same and make them as a 3. And we got as far as the first 2, and then literally spent about 8 months in post on those 2, just for people's time and schedules and stuff. So that grand plan we'll just get this sort of no budget studio system style thing of having things ticking over whilst also working at the same time, which you talked about a little bit before. But yeah, Fragile we made, shot in a day, and basically studio stuff and some stuff shot in the cinema that I worked in. So all the stuff with the lift is the cinema lift that we managed to commandeer for a morning, and the rest was studio based stuff. And yeah, we went from there, and it was this idea of a kind of all the films are on YouTube, if people want to check them out. But yeah, that was the first one.
Okay, and then. So this kind of covers the first 2 then, basically. And is that the toughest thing, you think, in terms of the filmmaking? Because obviously there's a huge amount of preparation. You do the filming, that will probably happen over a weekend. But because you're then relying on other people, and there's so many other things to happen in terms of post-production, because you've got the editing, you've got the score, you've got the sound mix, you've got the colorization, the grading, etc. Is that really just what takes up the time?
I think so, yeah. I mean, for me, I always knew that both Fragile and Harvest, which was the film that we did after that, I knew that both of them had to have a really kind of intricate and elaborate sound design, which obviously takes time. It's lots of back and forth. As with a lot of people, you're working with people who are either working on other film jobs, or they're working other jobs that are unrelated. So it's kind of dependent on their time to kind of, they'll do a draft and it'll be a back and forth. Most independent filmmakers, I think, will face the same thing. I think is when you haven't got the money to necessarily pay people, it's down to goodwill and hopefully treating people well, but still trying to keep things ticking over. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I'm sure anyone who watches this is just treating people well is the key thing about actually making these things. Yeah. So when you come to write a film, or do you, what's your process for writing a movie? Do you just start with notes and post-it notes, and what app do you use for writing your film scripts?
I use a variety of things. I'm really quite disorganized with it, unfortunately. I'll use kind of notebooks, and I'll use notes in my phone, and I'll use even email like drafts. So I'll start an email, or just open a new window in Gmail and just and sort of type some stuff out, and it might just be beats of a story of where it's going to go, or even just a list of potential projects, and going, well, which one would I want to do next? And that often doesn't help me, because I just go, well, I want to make them all. So I don't know. It's a kind of bit of a patchwork in that sense, really. And then it's just kind of hammering it out as a script based on beats, really.
Right. And which screenwriting software do you use?
I just use Word and then format it myself. It's a pain, but but it's all right. You get through it, and as long as my approach has always been kind of, as long as it looks like a script and reads like a script at the end of it, it's fine, But yeah, I had a phase where I was teaching screenwriting a little bit as well, and getting kind of BTEC students to take on board the kind of industry standard formatting. I found myself thinking, why do we do this? Aside from timing, it just seems to be really laborious.
Yeah, having examined this, I did a blog on screenwriting apps recently, and realized that actually the ones that you come across, like Final Draft, and the one that I use now, which is Fade In, basically, I know from having worked in computers for so long, these are databases. Technically speaking, these are databases, and basically you're tagging bits of text to say this is either a character name or it's a piece of action, etc. And by doing that, you can then produce reports. And I think this is what, where Final Draft is the strength and became the industry standard, is so that actually you can get the production reporting out and saying, okay, so how many scenes are shot? How many times do we use this location? What scenes, what locations do we actually need? How many lines has this particular character? If we're thinking about casting it, etc. How big a part is this? It's all that stuff. Which I think if you're making a short film is possibly less important, possibly. But I think when you're writing a feature film, I completely understand. You want something that you can just hammer in, and the idea of just being able to hit return and tab, and it automatically formats stuff for you is a real joy when you're just trying to get stuff down on paper.
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of had the thought of maybe I should kind of migrate to something like that, but it's just, and it's ended up just kind of organically working this way, that I just do it. You get into your own way of working, even though there's probably a quicker workaround. Just kind of, it's what you do,
Yeah, no, and I remember talking to Clive Barker years ago when I typed up one of Clive's short stories for him. He always wrote by hand. I believe he still does. And he said, this is my process. This is how I work. I know, that it comes out of there, goes down the right out, and it comes out of the pen. It's, he didn't want to go, and it's very easy, I think, when you're dealing with software packages, to actually get into like, oh, it does this, oh, it does that, and you think, oh no, I need to format it like this. But the other thing, of course, I should mention is fountain.io, for those of you who are interested, which is a way of converting just simple text files into a formatted script. And that is really interesting as well. Type in characters, hit return, and then very, very straightforward. And then it will, you have to buy apps that will actually convert it into a proper script. So we've got a question coming in from Johnny H. Johnny, I will come back to your question a little bit later on, because it's to do with the festival. But okay, so you got your script. That's it. You've made your film, and the next one you made was Mortified. I love Mortified. It's a nice little one.
Yeah. That's by far the most successful prior to Metamorphosis, which obviously we'll talk about in a moment. It's kind of a real good example, I think, of kind of the thing that everybody says for comedy is like, the having a setup and a punchline kind of short film, really short, kind of succinct. So I kind of set about doing that, and it sold to like TV networks and stuff, and it did really well. And it made me think when you're dealing with kind of European, like I think it was NBC Universal bought it in Italy, and I think HBO bought it for Hungary, I think.
Right.
And when they're paying like €100 a minute, I'm thinking I should have made a longer film than 2.5 minutes, but then it wouldn't work, But yeah, that was a really fun one, a really challenging one as well. Kind of working with an entirely child cast as well.
It is the obvious question. How many children were you working with?
There are 4, which a good friend of mine, director here in Sheffield, called Debbie Howard. The girl with the really curly hair and the boy who gets decapitated at the beginning are her 2 twins, who are now kind of 19, which is, and they're off kind of doing all sorts of things, and one's at university and stuff. And Debbie was very kind to kind of, because it's always a weird thing to do. Casting a film like that is always going to be kind of tough for parents who are in any way normal, I think, because it's a bit of an ask, But Deb was really good about it, and she was happy with it. And obviously we went through all the even the kind of process of the kind of child acting licenses and all that kind of stuff was a new one for me as well. So going through that, and the fact that one of them lived in, I think one of the lead actress was from Bradford, and the others were from Sheffield. So we had to do kind of applications for the 3 that were from Sheffield to Sheffield City Council, and we had to find Olivia's the relevant equivalent in Bradford as well. So that was all kind of an interesting process, and the time that takes as well. That's another thing, because I think sometimes, I know I've adopted the approach sometimes when filming is like, well, we'll just go do it. And when you need a license that takes potentially 6 weeks to process, you can't just go and do it, so.
It's a really important thing to consider when you're working with kids in this country. You touched on something earlier on. You said they actually sold the film. How did that come about? That I think you're the first filmmaker I've spoken to who said, "Oh yeah, I sold my short film."
It's it's something that can happen, which is really good. It came off the back of when we screened at Encounters in Bristol. It got selected for the late lounge section of Encounters, and then I met a sales agent while I was there who really liked the film and said we'd like to take it on, and they did it all basically. So it was through who was it through? I can't remember the name of I haven't spoken to them in a long time. They probably owe me some money still, actually, thinking about it. I kind of struck up that conversation, and then we did all the networky stuff that you're meant to do at film festivals, which is all. It can be like pulling teeth, or it can be really beneficial. It varies, but we did that, and then I just kept getting notifications. Oh, but we've had a sale to whatever, and quite often as well, it took me asking to find out where it had sold to as well. They were like, "There's a payment for a sale," and it took a bit of kind of digging for me to say, well, who's it sold to and where, and that kind of stuff, because they just do that as a process. They're out shopping films to TV networks, and I guess more so now kind of VOD platforms and stuff like that. So but I think now as well, filmmakers can probably do a lot of it themselves.
It's interesting. I know Shorts UK, I was listening to one of their guys talking at BAFTA at a short film day that I attended, and it was also interesting to hear you talk about a sales agent that is done well by. One has heard so many horror stories about sales agents.
It's very much shark-ridden waters, I think, with sales of shorts and of features as well. I think there's a lot of people claiming to offer a great deal, and it's that you do hear horror stories, and you hear of people just, you know, they're buying up, like, not even buying up, they're signing up like film after film after film after film, and it won't necessarily lead anywhere. It's just they're amassing a catalogue of content that, you know, it's quantity rather than quality, I think, sometimes. But
yeah, very interesting. Yes, very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's Mortified. Let's talk about that lovely film Metamorphosis.
Yes.
Which I enjoyed doing. That was a really fun day.
It was great. It was really good, and it was a pleasure to have you back in Sheffield, because obviously you came to the festival for Nightbreed originally. That's why how we met originally, I think.
Indeed, it was, yeah, because it was. This is the Cabal cut screening,
yes,
courtesy of Russell Cherrington.
Oh.
So that's indeed how we got to meet. And so yeah, and that's when I got to see Sightseers. I think was the opening.
It was, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And then we did Nightbreed as well. So now this was for ABCs of Death 2, is that right?
That's right. Yeah. We made it for that competition, which would have been now that would have been 2013, wouldn't it?
Yes,
I believe.
Yes. It must. I was trying to think. Yeah, because I think it was 2012. I met you.
Yeah.
It would. Yes, and then yeah.
So obviously, yeah, we again, it was a shot in a very long day, because I think you left and we carried on.
I was actually over at. That's right, because I was actually at Grimfest. I was over at Manchester.
Yeah.
Then I was there for the Grimfest, and I kind of ducked out on the Sunday to come across and do the filming. I remember it was Train Journeys. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. We, you know, shooting that film again. What I've always tried to do a little bit is to sort of try and push myself and push the envelope a little bit. So I was like, well, I've never shot a full POV short before. What can we do? How can we make something like that entertaining and not be just kind of, you know, how can it still hit the kind of dramatic and narrative beats that you need it to? It turns out shooting people is a good way to keep that thing ticking over, and have lots of running. Because obviously now that there's, I think it just opened this weekend. The POV, the Hardcore Henry opened this weekend.
Yeah, and I think they got an awful lot more stunts in theirs, I think.
That's it. Well, the rig was being worn by our DOP, and he's a very good DOP, but he's not an acrobat. So it's all good. So yeah, that was again a learning curve of doing that, and, you know, shooting entirely on a GoPro, and the kind of technical and kind of logistical challenges that means as well. You know, that you can't see it necessarily, or you can see we could walk through a preview on the GoPro app, but we couldn't actually see it, what was being filmed live.
That's right, because I remember I was walking in and saying, "Really, you're going to shoot it on that? That's amazing that you could do it." And what I found interesting, and forgive me, what's your DOP's name? On
Alex.
Alex.
Yes. Alex Veach.
Yeah. Yes. Alex came and he was actually wearing it on his chest. I was thinking, should he? Oh, okay, no, it makes. And then I realized when you actually cut it together, it makes perfect sense that that's where the POV is from. When I was actually talking to him, and he does give that lovely fisheye, slightly fisheye effect as well. So let's take this one. So we started in the morning and we got everyone dressed and so on. You had a guy come in to teach people how to move with guns and so on.
Yeah.
So then I presume basically you just got a whole load of mates together apart from me, you know.
Lots of favors, yeah. And lots of rotational roles as well. So because we've got people in kind of hazmat suits, so there's no reason why you can't then have that person, if you haven't seen their face, just put them in another role and shoot that later. You know, it's that kind of stuff. But it was a kind of an interesting day, because there was a gap basically between when we finished Mortified and Reel 4, which was the Super 8 film that I shot for the Straight 8 competition. Right. And that was 2008. I believe. And then the first edition of the festival was 2009, and I didn't make another film until 2013, because they were both kind of running alongside each other for a bit, and then one had to take a front seat a little bit, just because of the nature of how much preparation and organisation a film festival takes. Right. Yeah, it was good to get back into it, and I've always got that kind of to keep going and do stuff when the time's right, really. You know?
Yeah. The as I say, the interesting. I don't know. Are you okay to share some of the technical tricks that you used to so that you had a drone?
We did, yeah. The closing shot of the film is where it cuts from the kind of strict POV of the GoPro strapped to Alex. It then cuts to a drone shot where we kind of approximated roughly where that it would be. We start the drone shot roughly at chest height, and then just do a kind of like cut, basically. So, for anyone who hasn't seen the film, it's basically someone undertaking an experimental drug trial, and they get some rather weird side effects. Let's say that. So all the way through, there's kind of because you're seeing it through his eyes, you're seeing like weird stuff happening to his vision. It goes blurry, it goes red, it goes kind of pink, and at the end of the film, we were able to use that to kind of cover that cut between the camera strap to the operator to go to the drone shot. And I think the kind of law changed relatively soon after that, I think, because they brought in the laws about that you can only fly drones in the middle of open fields or in the middle of a park. So it has to be so far away from people and buildings. And we were basically flying it with like probably about a 10, 12 person crew on top of a building. So it's
in the middle of Sheffield.
In the middle of Sheffield, yeah. But yeah, we thankfully, it was fine, obviously. But the drone was an interesting one because we shot the test that we tried to do a take, and the first attempt, the two of the propellers didn't engage on the drone. There was 4 on the drone, and 2 didn't engage. So all that happened is when he tried to lift it off the ground, it just flipped onto its top, and there was bits of propeller flying everywhere. And there's just this kind of like your stomach just turns when stuff like that happens, because you're like, that's that shot ruined.
Yeah,
it hasn't got any more propellers. But we got it in the end, and it was fine. And it was strange, but it was. I also like the falling, the way you got the falling. We had a polystyrene head that had a hollowed out bit in the middle, which was a gaffer taped a GoPro with its full kind of protective kind of casing, and it was just a case of keeping it rolling and throwing it up into the air, and time after time, and finding whichever was the best take, because the idea being that the guy is shot down from the sky by your good self, in fact.
By my good self, yes, absolutely. That was a fun thing to do.
Yeah. So obviously it was. You're always risking your camera being completely destroyed if it drops kind of fully, but it was just lots of little sequences and little shots that we could then sort of patchwork together into a cohesive sort of what was supposed to be one take, which obviously is many takes really, and throughout the whole film.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that kind of brings us up to your most recent terms of filming. So I'm getting quite a few questions coming in about the festival. So let's talk about Celluloid Screams. So how did that come about?
It sort of came about from me thinking that Sheffield should have its own horror festival, and that because obviously having made films, I travelled around to quite a few festivals, and was always sort of making notes mentally on the off chance that someday I might get the chance to actually do it. And one of the defining ones for me, which it was kind of late on, I think it was a year before let me think. Yeah, I think it was I was at Fantasia in Montreal, which for anyone who's into genre festivals is my favorite by far.
Right.
Mortified played there with the children, the kind of Killer Kid movie that was made, the British one, that was made a few years ago, and it played with the Canadian premiere of that, which obviously it has kind of, it's a nice fit basically. But it was 2 sold out screenings. It was about 800 people in each screening, and like what amazed me was that they treated me kind of like a kind of rock star. It was bizarre because, you know, I as far as I was concerned, I was just some guy who made a film that had got into a festival, and when I got over there, I was treated by the crowd, by all the fans watching the films, and by the festival staff, was treated as well as if I was a VIP. And that really inspired me when putting Celluloid Screams together, is that, you know, for every guest that comes to the festival, even if they're not kind of your headline guests, everybody is treated as well as everybody else. And that's the way that it should be. And also, for me, going to festivals, I've been at festivals where I've been sat as a fan thinking, why are they showing this film? You know, what I can't understand what you know. There's always going to be a degree of kind of subjectivity to it, but
of course, yeah.
When you look at a film and you think, well, this, you know, this is, I'm not impressed by this at all. That kind of has always informed, you know, the kind of mantra of the festival is like, if I was sat in a cinema watching, it's through the programming process as well. If I was sat at a festival in my seat watching something, I was thinking, I can't understand why this is here, why this is being screened. That really informs it, because at the end of the day, me and the other guys who work on the festival, we're kind of fans first, really.
Right.
That's kind of where it came from. Kind of going to festivals, making notes, thinking about what I think would make a festival that I would want to go to and pay money to go to, and that's kind of where it came from.
I think it was, what was really nice is the fact, and I think that has a lot to do with the venue as well. Is the fact that you're lucky because you have this lovely open area bar where people can both eat and drink and so on. And there is, obviously I've been there twice now. First time was with Nightbreed, and it was a very interesting evening in the bar chatting with Simon and a couple of other filmmakers. But last year when I was there, it's just, you know, you can talk to filmmakers, you talk to fans, you talk to everybody, and everyone just kind of mingles and just has a chat and so on. And it's a really nice atmosphere there, and everyone can just talk to anybody.
Yeah, I mean that's always been a good thing, and you're right. The venue is great. The showroom in Sheffield is a really great place. It's the natural home for the festival, I think. And you know, we are getting bigger, but I hope that we can kind of stay there for kind of years to come. You know, and find a way, if we do kind of get bigger and bigger and bigger, that there's a way to still do it there, because I think it fits there. You know, and the vibe is right. It doesn't, you know, sometimes I think if a festival does get bigger, you run the risk of losing what's special about it in the first place, I think.
Right. And okay, so I'd like to move on. We've had 1, 2, 3 questions come in. Sorry, folks, this shows how old I'm getting now. I actually have to put my glasses on, which obviously I always try not to do, because you're just going to see my screen reflected. Okay, so this came in from Johnny. Do you negotiate with other film festivals in the UK who plays some of the popular indie films first?
Ooh, yeah. That's a really good question. There's always the thing with any film festival, whether it's genre festivals or kind of even the kind of top tier ones, is this premiere status question of who gets films first, who gets the premiere, and it'd be interesting to do a poll of fans, really, because there's a lot that would suggest that that premiere status only really matters to press and maybe to the festivals themselves, perhaps.
Right.
The way we've always approached that is that premieres are great. Don't get me wrong. You know, it's great to have a UK premiere of a title that you know is going to tear the roof off. But at the end of the day, our approach is that premieres are nice, but not a requirement necessarily. And we always try and work with everybody, because I don't see that for me, there's no mileage in kind of backstabbing and sniping that goes on. You do hear about it, about kind of festivals kind of hating each other. I'm not into that. It's just not what it's not in my makeup to do that. I think as long as if people are cool with us because we're cool with them, I hope, and we've got a lot of friends. We know the guys from Fright Fest. We know really good friends with the guys from the Mayhem Festival and the Abattoir Horror Festival in Wales. All great shouts and really well worth checking out, going to those festivals, because they're all great, and we always just try and work with people, because that you get a better kind of rapport, and it's better working with people than against them, ultimately, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a very interesting question. Okay, and this kind of, I mentioned earlier on, Rob, I was going to ask you, what are your top 3 tips? But this is coming from Joe. I've always wanted to know what film festivals look for in selecting films. Do you have a personal criteria? I'm guessing you must have, because you're a person.
Yeah. I think for me, it always boils down to that thing, like I was saying before, of how would I feel watching this as an audience member? How is it making me feel as a film? I think generally there isn't a hard and fast rule. I think it's great if films try and do something different, or even if not that, they offer some new spin on something, or that it's not that. It's really tough. That there's something different that they're trying to do with that film, and the main thing, I think, is that you can see that the filmmakers care about what they're doing as well. Because I think sometimes it's less so in indie circles, I think, because I think to be an independent filmmaker, I think you have to be completely committed to it and believe in it and be passionate about it. But I think sometimes you will see films where it's been made because they've had the money, or because they I don't know, that it was an easy, that making horror movies is easy, which is something I have heard is
yeah, of course it is. Yeah,
they're an easy sell. So just it's that, and you're dealing with kind of like, I don't know, like that's an accountant's way of looking at filmmaking, or a kind of an executive's way of looking at it. Of it's easy. We just put it's 4 girls in a cabin and there's a monster, and it's that may have worked like way back. It may have worked in the 50s and 60s perhaps, but there needs to be more care than that. Than just that. And I think in most cases, independent filmmakers are really good at that, though. So I've kind of digressed a little bit there. So.
No. Funnily enough, you've led very nicely into the into a point that's being a question from Kim Lehman, and again, I've heard this before. It's just like a lot of filmmakers start out in horror. I'm quoting. I don't believe this, because horror aficionados have lower standards than other filmmaking.
Yeah, that really annoys me.
Yeah. It does too. It does me too. But Kim Lehman, Robert, with horror films like The Witch, It Follows, and Final Girls getting more mainstream attention, do you attribute that to social media, or do you think it's those types of films that the public wants to see, not necessarily a die-hard horror fan?
I think it's a really tricky one, because it's that what you're dealing with there is this concept of elevated genre, aren't you? Which is a term that kind of is kicked around again by press, or by maybe some of the trade papers, of this idea of the thing that really annoys me all the time is when I read reviews out of Sundance or South by Southwest or or Tribeca or any of these big festivals that have horror midnight sections or horror sections, and the trade papers will, in the reviews, they'll say it may satisfy the midnight horror crowd, but but real people won't like it. It's that kind of a standpoint, and it really, really annoys me. because I think for me, like horror fans, certainly I can speak for the audiences as you've seen who come to us. You know, they're most astute, kind of insightful people that you're going to who have everything. You know, it's not just the kind of they're after the 6 kills that are in the movie and that's it. You know, they want to be challenged. They want films that are interesting and kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit, not necessarily in gore, but in ideas and in thought. You know,
it is very interesting. I think some of the nicest bunch of people. In fact, this was said at London Horror Society last night. Is the fact that because I went with my mate Dawson, and he was just saying, you know, he really likes going to these things because horror fans generally just really, really nice, interesting people in and of themselves. That, you know, and therefore, what we want is to be treated like intelligent people. And there are still new ways of. Obviously, there are, you know, certain tropes, etc., but there are still more imaginative. I think Goodnight Mommy was one of my favorite films from the festival last year. I was so looking forward to seeing that, just because, you know, it was just a different take. It was a different, you know, different spin. I also really enjoyed these final hours, which I saw at both Fright Fest, and you had it at yours as well. I was just actually saying, I've just realized that time's getting away with us, as it often does these things. If anybody would like to come on and join us live to ask their questions, do please just put a comment on the Google page, and Craig will pass those on to us. So this is a question that's come in from Darren Gaskill. Which film are you most proud of screening at Celluloid Screams, and why?
Ooh. Hi, Darren. Darren's a regular at the festival. I'm really proud. You mentioned Goodnight Mommy. I mean, that was one that we fought for last year, and it basically ended up where the distributor that was putting it out withdrew from distribution in the UK. So that kind of threw a complete spanner in the works, in that it then didn't have a UK distributor. But because that deal was already signed, the sales agent wouldn't commit to any further festival screenings. So it was literally like months of kind of pushing and emailing the Austrian Film Commission and emailing the production company and really pissing off the... sorry if I'm not allowed to swear.
Of course you are, yeah. We're talking about horror. Fine. I'm assuming adults are watching this, yeah.
But that you know, really kind of pissing off the sales agent, because effectively I was like, I care enough about getting this film that I'm prepared to annoy you by going over your head to the people who made it, saying, this is a ridiculous situation, we want this film, and for bureaucratic reasons we're not able to have it. And it was just by me being a kind of a bloodhound about it that we just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and we got it, which was great. So really proud of that. Really pleased that the first year we had the first, I think it was the first UK screening of Paranormal Activity as our secret film the first year,
right?
Which was a great way to kind of to kick off with that kind of kudos. And probably the one that I'm most proud of was opening with The Editor in 2014, because I love Astron 6, and you know, if anyone can see the shirt that I'm wearing, I was going to say, this is the Void, isn't it? Yeah, it is the Void, yeah. Which we're very, very, very keen to see. I know Steve has locked the picture on it now and is kind of moving into post on it, which is, you know, whether it'll be ready in time, whether we can have it. It may be kind of a big deal. It may be Sundance next year, even. You know, who knows? But you know, if I can apply the same techniques as I apply to Goodnight Mommy, then I'm going to do my best that we get it if we can. So, but yeah, The Editor was an absolute joy, and again, it took a lot of getting, because they weren't sure if it was going to be in Toronto or not that same year. Because when you're dealing with like the top tier festivals like Toronto and like Berlin and kind of some of the other, and Cannes, obviously, you're kind of dealing with that they won't even show you a film if it's gotten into that festival from the point when it gets in to the festival. There's basically like an embargo on it.
Right.
So it's, in a way, you don't even know if the film is going to be right for you because they won't even show it to you. So quite often they want you to go sight unseen on stuff, which is a real risk. You know, I think we've done that maybe once or twice before. I don't think we'd seen the finished version of the editor when we went for it, but thankfully Adam Brooks was really, really kind to us and sent us kind of the original rough cut, which had half the dialogue missing. So that was, we kind of knew we needed to make a call on it, but it was interesting to basically see half of a film,
right?
And then and kind of fill in the gaps. I was like, well, that's already quite funny. Maybe when the second half of the conversation comes in, it'll be even more funny, but it's good enough. It's funny enough already. So yeah, that was great. And obviously the kind of the side point to that is that obviously we got Adam, Connor, and Matt to come over as well, because we love those guys. We love everything that they've done, and we screened Manborg 2 years before as well. And it was just a dream come true to have them with us. So it was great.
Yeah. I'm huge fans of Astron 6 and those guys. I'm really looking forward to the Void as well. And speaking of t-shirts, incidentally, I did spot
that.
Yeah, very proudly wearing my. It was a very easy costume choice to make for this evening's show, because I do think about these things honestly. Okay, Steve, you would like to come and join. I think it's just Steve who's going to come and join us live. Steve, I will send you out your Steve Zarebski, who's one of our regulars, will come and join us. Let me, if I can get Steve on the show. Bear with me, Steve. I'm typing, and I'm going to send you out the invitation now. And so, actually, whilst Steve's coming on, and we've got a statement here from Matt. Personally, I think it's fantastic, and this is referring to Kim's comment. I think it's about The Witch, etc., going into the mainstream. I think it's fantastic, but it really needs to be advertised properly or explained to somebody that isn't sure what they're getting. I adore The Witch, but it has a place in festivals more than mainstream, simply because as a festival goer is more likely to keep an open mind. Do you think that's true? Do you think? I guess it's true of any work of art. You know, to reach an audience, you have to explain. You have to intrigue them you have to intrigue people rather than explain to them, perhaps. But yeah, I don't know what your thoughts of that.
I think with The Witch specifically, I mean, speaking of going sight unseen, The Witch was one that we had to. They couldn't show it to us. And they said, if you want it, you basically have to say yes. And it's like, okay. And you kind of like, what I find with stuff like that is gut instinct is a huge factor. So it's like, if we think now 8 years in that something is going to be right for us, and you kind of just have a real kind of feeling about it, 99% of the time you're right. And then the three of us from the programming team went to see it the week before the festival in Nottingham, and we were kind of like, if this is bad, we're gonna at least we can introduce it and kind of with some degree of clarity, instead of going, yeah, this is a film, we haven't seen it yet. But the Witch was one that we kind of knew based on the kind of pre kind of word that it was going to be okay. But I mean, in terms of the kind of release strategy, I think a lot of the time it is down to they have to advertise it in the widest possible way, and it's inevitably going to disappoint people, because if you go into The Witch thinking you're going to get like a kind of standard sort of spooky things in the woods kind of film, it's very different, isn't it? It's not that. But I don't know. I think film festival audiences are more kind of open to stuff because you've already got people on board, particularly for a festival like ours where people will buy a pass for the entire weekend, and in some cases will buy a pass. I know some of the guys, Darren included, actually, who was asking the question before, will buy his pass without knowing anything that's on, because we'll put kind of early bird offers on and stuff. And he's just like, well, I know that I'm coming. I know that I'm going to watch everything, so it doesn't really matter. So you've already, for people like that, it's really, really valuable to us that we have people who will come back and trust our judgment on stuff like that. But in terms of the mainstream, it's tricky, really, because you're always going to have films that aren't what people necessarily think they're going to be. Same with It Follows, I suppose. I mean, that one, the distribution strategy for that was very different to a lot of other films, in that they went for kind of sort of big non-genre festivals, and went from there. I think Steve was.
Yes, I think that's Steve, and both Steve and Johnny have just joined us. Guys, just before I invite you both on to speak, I've just got a quick question in from Mark Logan. Hi, Robert. What upcoming 26 titles are you most excited to see this year? Or what unreleased films have you seen so far this year? So what are you most looking forward to this year?
What have we seen? It's kind of early. We've seen... there's a lot that I'm still looking forward to. Polly from our team was out in Berlin watching some stuff. Really excited to see Trash Fire, Ricky Bates Jr.'s new film. Really keen to see Greasy Strangler, which Jim Hoskins' film, which I'm told is if people saw the Steve Oram movie, it has a similar vibe apparently, in terms of going all out to disgust and deprave. So anything like that, I'm automatically kind of interested to check out. But beyond that, we're kind of just open to ideas, really. And I hope we can find more, as good a caliber as we did last year, in my opinion. Let's say that. Yeah, that's a very politician's answer to the next question there. There are some films I would like to see. There are some films I have already seen. But there's lots around, and I think it's going to be a good year, I think, again.
Cool. All right, and Steve, bear with me just 2 seconds, Steve. Hi, Steve.
Hi.
What's your question for Robert?
Are any of your short films on the web to watch at all?
Hi, Steve. Yeah, if you go on YouTube and search for it's youtube.com/rnevitt. Everything apart from Metamorphosis, which is the one that Nick was in, all those ones are on there.
Okay, cool. You should check out the movie Darlings if you haven't already.
Oh, the Mickey Keating film.
Yeah.
Yeah, we screened it last year. Yeah, that was our secret film last year.
Yeah, I watched that last night.
Oh, cool. Did you like it?
Yeah.
No, it's good. It was an interesting one when we screened it. I think a lot of people really liked it. I think some people, because it was a secret, people were kind of not really prepared for it. So it was, it's good. I really like it.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much indeed, Steve. I'm going to mute you for the moment, and let me just put some volume up on Jonathan. Hi, Jonathan. What's your question for Robert?
Hi, guys. Robert, I need some tips on, say, someone wanted to run their own film night or film festival. What tips would you give to anyone who wanting to do their own film events or advice?
Okay. I would say do it, first of all. Definitely do it. That would be the first thing, because that's what I would have hoped to have been told when I just kind of belligerently went ahead and did it myself. I think the main things to do is kind of make sure that the venue is good that you're using. That's always a kind of a main thing. I think make sure that you're clearing the films properly, so making sure you're paying for the rights to screen the films. That's always a big thing, because legally you have to. And think about what kind of event you want to put on, really. Is this something you were looking to do yourself?
I did back in February. I did my own Women in Horror Month night, where I showed Sports feature and did a panel, pretty much all directed by women, and it's just something I've been interested in doing. You know, every few months I would like to do a little event here and there, similar to what Scott Lias does. I've always wanted to work with him on film nights, and yeah, because I see so many great films being talked about from Fantasia, Atlanta Film Festival, and all them, and it's like, oh wow, that's great to see these films at these festivals, you know. So yeah, and I'm thinking, well, why don't you do your own festival, and then see if you can get the films. If you get a really good enough venue, then yeah, you could show the films yourself maybe, and just to create that more buzz, so that they could be played at the likes of Celluloid Screams, Fright Fest, and so on, you know.
Yeah, I mean, go on.
Because it's about supporting independent filmmaking, and it's just creating more buzz about those films that you like and that you think that in your mind believe deserve a spotlight.
I think that's a really good point. I think, you know, trying to do something that was different. Another thing that part of the thing that sparked us to start the festival in the first place was to offer something that's outside of the mainstream. It's not just what you can go to your local multiplex to see. And I think there's so much independent talent out there that's you know, people making, you know, shorts and features, that there's plenty to go around, I think.
Yeah, I think that's I think that the fascinating thing is that at these festivals, the stuff that I've managed to get to see, there is just such a wide range of stuff that's available for the market as well. Okay, so I'm going to start wrapping up the show, but just before I do, Rob, I did ask you earlier on, what are your top 3 tips for filmmakers when they're thinking about submitting to festivals? What do you think filmmakers should be thinking about? Short films or feature films?
I think the top 3 things, I would say, first of all, make the best film that you possibly can, which is a kind of something that everybody always says, but I think it's a valid point. I think be nice is also a good approach. You know, no matter who you're dealing with. I had a film festival director once, before I was involved in festivals at all. I was kind of asking advice about what I should do in a similar thing, and the response was, well, you know, don't think of the film that you make as your calling card. Everything that you do is your calling card, and that can be the way that you wrote an email to somebody, and that could be the way that, if you went to the festival, the way you spoke to the person on the front desk, or the way that you dealt with a problem potentially, you know, because you do get if you're a filmmaker, and probably a lot of people watching, a lot of filmmakers watching will have been at festivals, and there will have been a technical problem. The sound isn't loud enough, the picture doesn't look right, the aspect ratio is wrong. If you know, you everything you do will influence the way that you go forward, I think. So I think that's a really big point as well. But in terms of submitting to festivals, make a really good film, and the film that you want to make above all, and you know, make sure that it's the film that you want to make, not what you think a film festival director is going to want to see, because films that kind of just come out of left field, you get films that are very kind of not formulaic, but they'll be following a certain pattern. It'll be, you know, stuff that's based on kind of Reddit posts or kind of urban legend stuff. There's a lot of that stuff around. It's fine, but again, if you're going to make that, make it better than the rest. Make it different than the rest, and just make the film that you make sure that it stands out in some way from others. And it's kind of a weird, nebulous thing that is almost hard to quantify, I think. Is that 2?
No, that's 2. Actually, I think that may be 2 or 3. But I was just wondering, in terms of short films, particularly, is there an ideal length? I know I've heard it's interesting, having watched quite a few short films. You sometimes think this is a 20-minute film which would have made a great 10-minute short film.
You get that quite often, I think. You know, I think, again, it almost goes back to that kind of stuff that, you know, almost like screenwriting theory, is like, what is the purpose of every component within your script, because it then follows through what is that scene or that performance or even that look of that character, what is that doing to drive that story forward, and how does it fit? Does everything fit? I think that's another thing, because and it might be that you go, oh, we had this really cool location, so we shot everything there. But if that cool location isn't intrinsic to that plot, then it just feels tacked on, and it doesn't feel like it's, everything has to be there for a reason, I think. But yeah, you get sort of, shorts. In terms of an ideal length, it should be, again, a really kind of teasing answer almost, is like it needs to be as long as the story dictates that it is, I think.
Right. Okay, so let's just remind people of a few dates. When do submissions close for Celluloid Screams for short and feature films?
They close on the 1st of July. We're on Film Freeway, so if you search for Celluloid Screams Horror Festival on Film Freeway, we're on there. The website is celluloidscreams.co.uk. The dates for this year's festival also is, probably should say, is the 21st to the 23rd of October at the Showroom Cinema in Sheffield. And I wholeheartedly recommend you come along. And you're always welcome, of course, Nick.
Thank you. It's in my diary. I was like, if I'm in the country, that's where I'm going to be. My usual answer every year. And when do the passes go on sale?
We've not set that yet. We had an early bird kind of phase pretty much straight after the last year's festival that have all gone now. But we'll be making announcements on our Facebook page and website so when the time comes. It normally isn't till kind of around kind of June, July time when we sort of start thinking about putting passes on sale.
Right. Well, as I say, I thoroughly recommend Celluloid Screams to anybody who hasn't been before. It really is one of my favourite festivals and I attended quite a lot when we were doing the Nightbreed screenings, and it was one of my favourites. Along with the other ones you mentioned, funnily enough, particularly Abattoir. I thought it was a really nice festival, just in terms of the vibe and the fact that you can. It's a chance for filmmakers to watch, to meet the audience, and get feedback, but also meet other filmmakers as well. Rob, this has been a great show. Thank you very much indeed for coming along and joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That's my pleasure. Hopefully we'll see you again soon and learn more about the festival. I'll be putting up links. Just to remind people that next week I'm going to be talking to another really interesting filmmaker who, funnily enough, I met at Jonathan's Women in Horror Month event. Jonathan, that's Abigail Blackmore, and who screened her short film Vintage Blood, which I adored. It's just a great short film. That's another one to recommend for you, Rob.
Cool.
So Abigail is going to be coming and joining me next month. A really top quality project. She's going to be joining me next month. And just a reminder to people, please subscribe to the Chattering with Nicholas Vince channel. That's the channel you're watching on YouTube now. Follow the links and check out the Chattering with Nicholas Vince Facebook group. We're well over 130 members now, and it's a chance for people like yourself, Rob, and again, just a chance for filmmakers to share what they're working on, and for people who watch the show to comment, ask questions, etc., and hook up with people. So thank you very much indeed. I'd like to say good night. Good night, Rob.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you to Jonathan. Thank you to Steve for joining me. This has been Chattering with Nicholas Vince, and I've been chattering with Robert Nevitt, Festival Director of Celluloid Screams and filmmaker. See you guys next week when I shall be talking to Abigail Blackmore. Take care, folks.